The Other Dr. Morgan. A Psychological Thriller. Part 1. The First Signs. Dr. Sarah Morgan had always prided herself on precision. In surgery, a millimeter could mean the difference between life and death. In her personal life, she maintained the same meticulous order. Bills paid on time, appointments logged months in advance, passwords changed quarterly. Control was not just a preference, it was her religion. Which made the email she received on a Tuesday morning all the more unsettling. Thank you for your purchase at Bergman Medical Supply. Your order of $4,732 has been processed and will ship within 3 to 5 business days. Sarah stared at the screen in her office at St. Catherine's Hospital, the morning light streaming through the windows, casting sharp shadows across her desk. She hadn't ordered anything from Bergman Medical Supply. She clicked through to her credit card account, fingers moving with surgical precision across the keyboard. There it was, the charge, and 3 others she didn't recognize. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. Identity theft. It happened to thousands of people every day. Annoying, certainly, inconvenient, but manageable. She called the credit card company, filed a dispute, requested new cards. The customer service representative assured her this was routine, that she'd be fully protected. By noon, she'd almost forgotten about it, lost in the demanding rhythm of patient consultations and surgical prep. Dr. Sarah Morgan was a thoracic surgeon, one of the best in the state, and her calendar didn't allow time for dwelling on minor inconveniences. But then came the call from the medical board.
Morgan, we need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention, the administrator said, her voice carrying that particular blend of professional courtesy and underlying suspicion that Sarah had heard countless times when hospitals faced litigation. Concerns? What kind of concerns? Prescriptions written under your DEA number for controlled substances in quantities that have raised flags. Sarah's hand tightened around the phone. That's impossible. I don't write those kinds of prescriptions. My specialty doesn't. We understand, doctor, which is why we're calling, but we need you to come in and review the records, tomorrow morning, if possible. After she hung up, Sarah sat motionless in her office, her mind racing through possibilities. Someone had her credit card information. Someone had her DEA number. These weren't random attacks. They were too specific, too targeted. Someone was stealing pieces of her identity. That night, Sarah sat in her downtown apartment, surrounded by opened mail, bank statements, and her laptop displaying multiple tabs of financial accounts. Everything else seemed normal. No other unusual charges, no loans taken out in her name, no credit inquiries she hadn't initiated. Just those 4 charges and the prescriptions. She poured herself a glass of wine, a 2015 Bordeaux she'd been saving for a special occasion, though she couldn't remember now what occasion she'd been waiting for, and tried to calm the growing unease in her chest. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath her, lights twinkling like a circuit board. Usually the view soothed her. Tonight it felt exposed, vulnerable. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Dr. Morgan, I hope you're enjoying the view from the 42nd floor. Sarah's wineglass slipped from her hand, red liquid spreading across the white carpet like blood. She stepped back from the windows, her heart hammering. Someone was watching her.
Right now. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called 911. Part 2. The Investigation. Detective James Reeves had seen his share of identity theft cases, but something about Dr. Morgan's situation bothered him from the start. Most identity theft followed predictable patterns: maxed out credit cards, loans, fraudulent tax returns. This felt different, more personal.
"Walk me through it again," he said, sitting across from Sarah in the hospital's small conference room the next morning. He was in his mid-40s, with graying hair and tired eyes that suggested he'd seen enough of humanity's worst to be perpetually disappointed, but not quite enough to stop caring entirely. Sarah recounted everything methodically, her surgeon's training evident in the precise way she organized information. The charges, the prescriptions, the text message. "The responding officers didn't find anyone outside your building," Reeves said. "No security camera footage of anyone suspicious in the area. I know what I saw, what I received. I believe you, doctor, but whoever sent that text either got lucky with a guess about which window was yours, or they know your apartment number. Who has access to that information?" Sarah considered. "Hospital administration, my colleagues, anyone I've given my address to for mail or deliveries, my cleaning service, the building management. What about patients? Patients wouldn't have my home address. That's kept confidential." Reeves made a note. "Tell me about the prescriptions. The medical board gave us copies. They're for OxyContin, mostly. Written for patients at various clinics across the state. None at this hospital. I've never worked at any of those clinics. I don't even know where some of them are. But the signature matches yours, and the DEA number is correct." Sarah felt a chill. How is that possible? That's what we need to find out. Someone has very detailed information about you, doctor. This isn't some random hacker who bought your credit card number on the dark web. This is someone who's studied you, collected information about you systematically. Why? Reeves leaned back in his chair. That's the question, isn't it? Sometimes stalkers fixate on people for reasons that make sense only to them. Sometimes it's revenge. Sometimes it's admiration twisted into something ugly. Do you have any ex-partners who might have a grudge? Any difficult interactions with patients or their families? Anyone who's shown unusual interest in you? Sarah thought back through the past months, years even. There had been failed relationships, certainly. She wasn't easy to be with. Too focused on work, too controlled. Her last boyfriend had said before walking out. But nothing that would inspire this level of obsession. "There was a malpractice case last year," she said slowly. "A patient died during surgery. Complications from a pre-existing condition we didn't know about. The family sued. We settled out of court. I'll need the details on that. What was the family name?" "Patterson. The patient was their father, Robert Patterson." Reeves wrote it down. "Anyone else? Think carefully, doctor. Any interactions that felt off, even slightly?" Sarah closed her eyes, trying to remember. As a surgeon, she interacted with dozens of people daily. Patients, families, nurses, residents, pharmaceutical reps, medical supply salespeople. Most conversations blurred together. But then she remembered. There was a patient about 3 months ago. She came in for a consultation about a possible thoracic procedure. Eleanor Hartley. She asked a lot of personal questions during the appointment. Not about the surgery, about me. Where I'd trained, where I lived, whether I was married. At the time, I thought she was just nervous, trying to assess whether she could trust me. But now it seems like more than professional due diligence," Reeves finished. "Did she end up having the surgery?" "No. She canceled her follow-up appointment, and I never heard from her again." Reeves stood. "I'm going to need you to make a list of everyone you can think of who's had unusual interactions with you in the past 6 months. And, doctor, until we figure out who's behind this, you need to be careful. Change your routines. Vary your routes to and from work. If you notice anyone following you or anything that feels off, call me immediately." He handed her his card. Sarah took it, noticing that her hand was shaking slightly. She was a surgeon. Her hands never shook. Part 3. The Double. The hearing at the medical board the next day was brutal. Sarah sat across from 3 administrators and 2 physician board members while they reviewed the fraudulent prescriptions written in her name.
Dr. Morgan, we understand you claim these aren't your prescriptions, but we have a serious problem, Dr. Richard Chen, the board chair, said. His face was impassive, bureaucratic. These prescriptions were called in from phone numbers registered to you. The signatures match exemplars we have on file, and in one case, a pharmacy security camera captured footage of someone picking up the prescription who showed ID with your name on it. Can I see the footage? Sarah asked. They pulled it up on a monitor. The quality was grainy, typical of pharmacy security cameras. A woman in sunglasses and a medical mask approached the counter. She was approximately Sarah's height and build, with similar dark hair pulled back in a bun. She handed over paperwork and what appeared to be ID, though the camera angle made it impossible to see details. The whole transaction took less than 2 minutes. That's not me, Sarah said, but even to her own ears, the protest sounded weak. The woman's posture, the way she moved, it was eerily familiar, like watching a shadow of herself. We are not terminating your license at this time, Chen continued.
But it is suspended pending the outcome of the police investigation. You cannot practice medicine until this is resolved, Dr. Morgan. I'm sorry, but we have no choice. The prescriptions represent a serious breach of controlled substance regulations, and until we can definitively prove they're fraudulent, we must act to protect public safety. Outside the hearing room, Sarah leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Her license suspended, her entire identity as a surgeon, the thing that defined her more than any other aspect of her life, stripped away. She thought of the patients on her surgical schedule, of the complex procedures she'd spent weeks preparing for. All of it gone. Her phone rang. Reeves. "Doctor, I need you to come down to the station. We found something." An hour later, Sarah sat in a windowless interview room staring at a photograph. It showed a woman who looked almost exactly like her. Same dark hair, same sharp jawline, same narrow nose. But the eyes were different, harder somehow, with an intensity that bordered on manic. "Her name is Catherine Morgan," Reeves said, "or at least that's one of the names she's used. Also Carol Morrison, Cassandra Mills, and about 6 others we've identified so far. She's a professional identity thief, but not the usual kind. She doesn't steal identities to commit financial fraud. She steals them to become people. I don't understand. Catherine has what psychologists call identity disturbance, likely related to a severe personality disorder. She becomes obsessed with specific individuals, usually successful professional women, and systematically works to take over their lives. She studies them, learns their habits, their speech patterns, their mannerisms. She uses makeup and sometimes minor cosmetic procedures to enhance whatever physical resemblance exists. And then she starts to become them. I don't understand. Catherine has what psychologists call identity disturbance, likely related to a severe personality disorder. She becomes obsessed with specific individuals, usually successful professional women, and systematically works to take over their lives. She studies them, learns their habits, their speech patterns, their mannerisms. She uses makeup and sometimes minor cosmetic procedures to enhance whatever physical resemblance exists, and then she starts to become them. Sarah stared at the photograph. How did she choose me? We're still working on that.
But we found her apartment, or one of them. You need to see this. Reeves pulled out his phone and showed her photos from the apartment. Sarah's stomach turned. The walls were covered with pictures of her, leaving the hospital, entering her apartment building, shopping for groceries. Hundreds of photographs taken over months. There were copies of her medical school diplomas, her board certifications, her publications, a detailed timeline of her daily routines, and in the corner, a full medical setup, surgical scrubs with St. Catherine's Hospital logos, prescription pads with her name printed on them, identification badges. "She's been planning this for a long time," Reeves said quietly. "We found evidence that she's done this before, to at least 4 other women over the past decade. She inserts herself into their lives gradually. First small frauds, then larger ones. In one case, she actually showed up at the victim's workplace, claiming to be her, convinced several colleagues she was the real person. What happened to the other victims? Reeves hesitated. 2 of them suffered complete psychological breakdowns, lost their jobs, their families. 1 committed suicide. The 4th disappeared. We never found her. Sarah felt ice in her veins. And Catherine? She moves on, changes names, changes cities, finds a new target. She's smart, careful. By the time her victims realize what's happening, she's already done significant damage, and she's always several steps ahead. Where is she now? We don't know. The apartment was abandoned. According to the landlord, she left 3 days ago, right after the medical board contacted you about the prescriptions. So she knows you're investigating. Yes, which makes her more dangerous. These kinds of offenders don't like losing control of the narrative. And doctor, you should know, we found journals in her apartment. She writes about her victims, about you, and what she writes is
concerning. Let me see them. I don't think that's. Detective, this person has stolen my identity, my career, possibly my entire life. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Reluctantly, Reeves handed her photocopies of several journal entries. Sarah began to read. Sarah doesn't know how lucky she is. Perfect apartment, perfect job, perfect life. She doesn't appreciate it. She goes through her days mechanically, emotionlessly. She saves lives but feels nothing. She has everything and values nothing. She doesn't deserve to be Dr. Sarah Morgan. But I do. I've studied her. I've become her. I'm better at being Sarah than she is. Soon everyone will see that. Soon I'll be the real Dr. Morgan and she'll be nothing. Just another broken woman who couldn't handle the pressure. They'll think she had a breakdown. Maybe she'll end up in a psychiatric hospital. Or maybe she'll just disappear. Either way, I'll take her place. I'll do her job better than she ever did. I'll live her life better than she ever could. I'll be the perfect Dr. Sarah Morgan. Sarah's hands shook as she read. The words were delusional, but they were also calculated. This wasn't random obsession. Catherine had studied her, analyzed her, found her weaknesses. She thinks I'm empty, Sarah said quietly, that I don't feel things deeply enough. The journals are full of justifications, Reeves said. She's convinced herself that by taking over your life, she's somehow saving it, making better use of it than you would. She's insane. She's mentally ill and extremely dangerous. We've issued a warrant for her arrest, but doctor, you need to understand. People like Catherine are very good at hiding, and they're very good at manipulation. She could approach you directly, pretend to be someone else, get close to you without you realizing it's her. What am I supposed to do? Hide? Stop living my life? For now, yes. We've arranged for a patrol car to keep watch on your apartment building. I'd recommend staying somewhere else temporarily, somewhere she wouldn't think to look for you. Sarah thought of her carefully ordered life, now in chaos. Her apartment, her sanctuary, compromised. Her career on hold. Even her sense of self felt uncertain, like looking in a funhouse mirror and not knowing which reflection was real. I have a colleague who has a cabin upstate, she said finally. She's offered to let me use it before. I'll call her. Good. Go there. Lay low. Don't tell anyone where you're going except me. No social media posts, no credit card transactions that could reveal your location. Use cash. And doctor, watch for anyone who seems too interested in you. Anyone who asks too many questions or seems to know things they shouldn't. That's Catherine's pattern. She gets close to her victims by pretending to be someone trustworthy. Part 4. The Cabin. The cabin was 2 hours north of the city, nestled in dense woods at the end of a long gravel driveway. Sarah had packed quickly,
Clothes, laptop, files related to her case. She'd withdrawn $1,000 in cash and left her credit cards at home. No trail. The isolation should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt oppressive. Sarah spent her first day there pacing the small space, checking the locks repeatedly, peering through windows at every sound. The forest pressed in from all sides, full of shadows and rustling branches. On the second day, she forced herself to be productive. She couldn't practice medicine, but she could research Catherine Morgan. Using the cabin's spotty internet connection, she dug into public records, news articles, court documents. Catherine's real name appeared to be Catherine Ann Winters. She'd grown up in foster care after her mother died when she was 8. Her father was unknown.
Psychological evaluations from her teenage years noted identity confusion, attachment issues, and difficulty distinguishing fantasy from reality. She'd been bright, tested with an IQ of 142, but troubled, cycling through multiple foster homes and psychiatric hospitalizations. As an adult, Catherine had worked various jobs in healthcare-adjacent fields: medical billing, pharmaceutical sales, hospital administration. Positions that gave her access to the infrastructure of medicine without requiring actual medical credentials. She'd been fired from several jobs for boundary violations and inappropriate relationships with colleagues, though the details were vague. The first confirmed case of her identity theft was 7 years ago. She'd targeted a dermatologist in Ohio, gradually assuming her identity over several months before the dermatologist discovered fraudulent credit cards and loans in her name. By the time police investigated, Catherine had disappeared. The dermatologist, Dr. Amanda Price, had spoken to reporters about the experience. "It was like being haunted by a ghost of yourself," Dr. Price had said. "She knew things about me that no one should know. She could predict my schedule, my habits. When the police showed me photographs of her, I felt like I was looking at a distorted mirror. She'd done something to her appearance, makeup, maybe minor procedures, to look more like me. It was uncanny and terrifying." Sarah kept reading, following Catherine's trail across the country. Each victim shared similarities: professional women, usually in medicine or law, typically single or divorced, with high-profile careers and relatively isolated personal lives. Women who, like Sarah, had built their identities around their work. Women who, if they disappeared, might not be missed immediately. That thought chilled Sarah to her core. How many people would actually notice if she vanished? She had colleagues, not friends, acquaintances, not relationships. Her parents had died years ago. No siblings. Her life was the hospital, her apartment, and the carefully maintained routines that connected them. Catherine had chosen well. On the third night at the cabin, Sarah was reviewing patient files. She couldn't perform surgery, but she could still consult remotely, advise other physicians. When she heard a sound outside, footsteps on gravel. She froze, laptop screen casting pale light across her face. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped at the front door. A knock. "Dr. Morgan? Sarah? It's Detective Reeves. Open the door." Sarah stood, slowly, quietly. She moved to the window and looked out. A figure stood at the door, but the porch light was off and it was too dark to see clearly. "Dr. Morgan?" the voice called again. "We found Catherine. We need you to come to the station to identify her." Something in Sarah's mind clicked into sharp focus. Reeves had her cell phone number. He would have called, not driven 2 hours to tell her in person. And how would he have known where she was? She'd told him she was going to a cabin, but had deliberately not specified which one or where. "Just a minute," Sarah called, keeping her voice steady. "Let me get decent." She moved quickly, quietly, through the cabin's small layout. There was a back door leading to the woods. She grabbed her phone, keys, and coat, then slipped out into the darkness. Behind her, she heard the front door open.
She hadn't locked it from the inside, trusting the isolation to provide security. Footsteps entered the cabin. "Dr. Morgan?" The voice was patient, calm, convincing. Sarah ran. Part 5. The Pursuit. The forest at night was disorienting, full of clutching branches and uneven ground. Sarah had no flashlight. Using one would give away her position. So she navigated by moonlight filtering through the canopy, moving as quickly as she dared. Behind her, she heard the cabin door slam open again. "Sarah!" The voice wasn't pretending anymore.
"You can't run from yourself!" Sarah ran harder, her breath coming in gasps. She'd always been fit. Surgery required stamina. But this was different. This was primal, prey fleeing predator. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out without stopping. A text from Reeves. "Where are you? Tried calling. No answer. Important update." With shaking hands, Sarah called him while still moving through the forest. "Doctor, where are you? I've been trying to reach you for an hour." "Someone came to the cabin," Sarah panted, "claiming to be you. I ran. I'm in the woods." "Jesus, listen to me carefully. Don't go back to the cabin. I'm sending patrol units to your location now, but they're at least 20 minutes away. Head toward any lights you see, any signs of civilization. I'll stay on the line with you." "How did she find me?" "We don't know, but doctor, there's something else. We found more of Catherine's journals. She's escalating. The last entry says she's tired of waiting and ready to complete the transformation. We think she's planning to harm you physically, maybe kill you." Sarah nearly stumbled over a log. "Why? If she wants my identity, why kill me?" "Because she wants to replace you completely. In her mind, there can only be one Dr. Sarah Morgan, and it needs to be her." Through the trees ahead, Sarah saw lights. A house, maybe a quarter-mile away. She angled toward it, trying to be quiet, but moving fast. The forest seemed to amplify every sound, her footfalls, her breathing, the pounding of her heart. Then she heard it behind her. Someone else moving through the forest, not trying to be quiet. "She's following me," Sarah whispered into the phone. "Keep moving. Don't look back. Just get to those lights." The lights grew closer. Sarah could make out details now. A farmhouse, warm glow in the windows, a pickup truck parked outside. Safety. She burst from the tree line and ran across an open field toward the house, abandoning stealth for speed. Behind her, Catherine emerged from the forest. In the moonlight, Sarah glanced back and saw her clearly for the first time. The resemblance was shocking, like seeing herself in a nightmare. Catherine wore clothes similar to ones Sarah owned, her hair styled identically. But her face was twisted with rage and desperation. "Sarah!" Catherine screamed. "Stop running from who you really are!" Sarah reached the farmhouse and pounded on the door. "Help! Please! Someone's chasing me!" The door opened to reveal an elderly man in flannel pajamas, his face confused and alarmed. "What in God's name?" "Call 911!" Sarah gasped. "Please, there's someone—" "I'm so sorry," Catherine's voice said from behind her, suddenly calm again, almost apologetic. "My sister, she's off her medications. I've been searching for her for hours." Sarah spun around. Catherine stood at the edge of the porch light's reach, her expression now arranged into perfect concern. The transformation was stunning. She'd shifted from manic pursuer to worried family member in seconds. "She's lying," Sarah said. "I'm Dr. Sarah Morgan. This woman has stolen my identity. She's been following me. The police are on their way." "Sir, I'm also Dr. Sarah Morgan," Catherine said, pulling out a wallet and displaying identification. "This is my sister, Catherine. She suffers from a severe delusional disorder. She believes she's me. It's part of her illness." The elderly man looked between them, utterly confused. "You two do look alike." "We're twins," Catherine said smoothly.
She ran away from a psychiatric facility 3 days ago. Please, I just need to get her back somewhere safe." "No!" Sarah showed her own ID. "Look at the details. Check the license numbers. They'll be different. She's using a fake." The man studied both IDs, his confusion deepening. "You two do look alike." "We're twins," Catherine said smoothly. "She ran away from a psychiatric facility 3 days ago. Please, I just need to get her back somewhere safe." "No!" Sarah showed her own ID. "Look at the details. Check the license numbers. They'll be different. She's using a fake." The man studied both IDs, his confusion deepening.
In the distance, sirens wailed. "The police will sort this out," he said finally. "But both of you stay right there. Don't move." Catherine's mask slipped for just a moment, fury flashing across her face. Then she smiled. "Of course, thank you for your help." 2 patrol cars pulled up the driveway, lights blazing. Officers emerged with weapons drawn, and Reeves' car screeched to a stop behind them. "Dr. Morgan," Reeves called out. "Which one?" Catherine asked, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. Reeves walked forward carefully, studying both women. Sarah realized the challenge he faced. They looked remarkably similar in the uncertain light, both dressed in dark clothing, both with the same general appearance. "Detective, it's me," Sarah said. "You gave me your card at the hospital. The number is 555-0147. You told me about Catherine's previous victims. Amanda Price in Ohio. 4 victims total. 1 committed suicide." "She's very good," Catherine said calmly. "She's had access to all my files, Detective. She's been studying me for months, learning details about the case. It's part of her delusion." "Check our fingerprints," Sarah said. "Our DNA, our medical records. Dr. Sarah Morgan has a surgical scar on her left hand from an injury during residency. Catherine won't have it." Catherine held out her left hand, and Sarah's heart sank. There was a scar, not identical to Sarah's, but close enough to pass a casual inspection. "Nice try," Catherine said. "But we're identical twins, remember? We share the same DNA. And we both have this scar. We got it together as children." "That's not true." Sarah's voice rose with desperation. Reeves held up his hand. "Catherine Winters, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and stalking. You have the right to remain silent." "Which one are you arresting?" Catherine interrupted. "Are you sure you have the right one?" "Dr. Morgan," Reeves said, looking directly at Sarah. "Where did we first meet?" "At the hospital, St.
Catherine's. In the small conference room on the 3rd floor. And what did I tell you about my daughter?" Sarah blinked. You didn't mention a daughter." Catherine smiled. "Trick question, Detective?" "No," Reeves said. "Dr. Morgan's answer is correct. I don't have a daughter. I never mentioned one. But you claim to know about my files, Catherine. If you'd really read them, you'd know I have 2 sons. You would have guessed sons or children, not stumbled on the fact that I never mentioned any family at all." Catherine's expression darkened. For a moment, Sarah thought she might attack, might lunge at one of them. Instead, she laughed, a high, brittle sound that sent chills down Sarah's spine. "It doesn't matter," Catherine said. "I'm already more her than she is. I've been living her life for months. I've written prescriptions, met with patients, built relationships. People believe I'm Dr. Sarah Morgan because I am. She's just the person who happened to be born with that name." "Take her in," Reeves ordered. As the officers moved forward, Catherine suddenly lunged, not at them, but at Sarah. She moved with surprising speed, pulling a scalpel from somewhere in her clothing. Sarah recognized it immediately, one of her own surgical instruments, stolen from God knows where. "If I can't be you, then neither can you," Catherine screamed. Training kicked in. Sarah grabbed Catherine's wrist, redirecting the blade away from her face. They grappled, spinning across the farmhouse porch. For a surreal moment, Sarah felt like she was fighting herself, a physical manifestation of every fear and doubt she'd ever had about her own identity. Then the officers pulled Catherine away, subduing her and securing the scalpel. She continued screaming, all pretense of sanity gone. "I'm Dr. Sarah Morgan. I'm Dr. Sarah Morgan. She stole my life. She stole who I was supposed to be." Part 6. The Aftermath. 3 months later, Sarah sat in her office at St. Sabia,
Catherine's hospital, reviewing her schedule for the week. Her medical license had been reinstated after an expedited review process. The medical board had issued a formal apology. The fraudulent prescriptions had been documented as identity theft. Catherine's fingerprints eventually found on the forged documents. Catherine herself was in a secure psychiatric facility, deemed unfit to stand trial. The evaluation had found severe personality disorder, persistent delusions, and a fundamental confusion about identity that ran deeper than any fraud or calculation. In a strange way, Sarah almost felt sorry for her. Catherine's journals, once fully reviewed, revealed a woman who'd never had a stable sense of self, who'd spent her entire life looking for an identity to inhabit because she'd never developed one of her own. But Sarah's sympathy was limited. The damage Catherine had caused was real. It had taken months to untangle the fraudulent accounts, repair Sarah's credit, and restore her professional reputation. More than that, it had shaken something fundamental in Sarah, her sense of security, her belief in the stability of identity itself. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in." Detective Reeves entered, looking less tired than when they'd first met. "Dr. Morgan? Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing." "I'm fine. Back to work. That's what matters." Reeves nodded, but his eyes were perceptive. "That's good. But, after something like this, it's normal to need time to process. Have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist?" Sarah bristled reflexively. "I don't need—" She stopped herself, recognizing the automatic defensiveness. "Maybe. I've been thinking about it." "Good. Because, Doctor, I've worked a lot of cases, and the ones that stay with people aren't always the ones where they get physically hurt. Sometimes it's the ones that make them question who they are." After Reeves left, Sarah sat in silence.
She thought about Catherine's journal entry, the accusation that Sarah went through life mechanically, without real feeling, that she had everything and valued nothing. Was that true? Sarah had built her entire identity around being a surgeon, around control and precision and professional excellence. She'd maintained emotional distance from patients, from colleagues, from romantic partners. She'd convinced herself it was necessary, that emotional detachment made her a better surgeon. But maybe it had also made her vulnerable in a different way. Catherine had been able to step into Sarah's life so easily because there wasn't much emotional substance there to replicate. The routines were rigid, the relationships superficial. It was like putting on a costume, easy to copy the external patterns when there wasn't much internal complexity. That evening, Sarah did something she hadn't done in years. She called her college roommate, Jennifer, whom she'd lost touch with during medical school. "Sarah, my God, it's been forever. How are you?" I've had a complicated few months, but I was thinking about you, about old times. Do you want to get dinner sometime?" The surprise in Jennifer's voice was evident, but so was pleasure. "I'd love that, really. When are you free?" They made plans for the following week. After hanging up, Sarah felt something unfamiliar, a lightness, maybe, a sense of possibility. She looked around her office, the diplomas on the wall, the neatly organized desk, the view of the hospital parking lot. This was her identity, yes, Dr. Sarah Morgan, thoracic surgeon. But maybe it didn't have to be her entire identity. Maybe being Dr. Sarah Morgan could include being someone who had friends, who called old roommates, who was messy sometimes, who felt things deeply instead of maintaining perfect emotional control. Maybe identity wasn't something rigid to be protected, but something fluid to be lived. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. For a moment, her heart seized. Then she opened it. "Hi, Dr. Morgan. This is your 3 p.m. patient confirming tomorrow's appointment. Looking forward to meeting you." Just a patient, nothing sinister. Sarah exhaled slowly, recognizing the lingering anxiety. That would take time to fade. Maybe it never would entirely, but she could live with that. She'd faced someone who literally wanted to erase her existence, and she'd survived. That had to count for something. She thought about Dr. Amanda Price, Catherine's first known victim, who'd told reporters that the experience was like being haunted by a ghost of yourself. Sarah understood that now, but she also understood something else, that the ghost, the shadow self, the stolen identity, had no power if you were fully inhabiting your own life. Catherine had seen emptiness in Sarah's carefully controlled existence and tried to fill it with herself. But the emptiness hadn't been real. It had been protection, isolation, fear. And now, having nearly lost everything, Sarah was finally ready to let some of that protection down. She turned back to her computer and opened a new document. For the first time in years, she began writing something that wasn't a medical paper or case notes. She started writing about what had happened to her, organizing her thoughts and feelings. Maybe she'd never show it to anyone. Maybe she'd eventually publish it to warn other potential victims. Maybe it would become part of her therapy if she decided to pursue that. But whatever form it took, it would be hers. Her words, her experience, her identity. No one could steal that. Epilogue. 6 months after Catherine's arrest, Sarah was in surgery, performing a complex thoracic procedure on a patient with an aortic aneurysm. Her hands moved with their usual precision, steady and sure.
Around her, the surgical team worked in practiced coordination. "Scalpel," Sarah said, and the instrument was placed in her palm without hesitation. This was still who she was, Dr. Sarah Morgan, surgeon. But now she was also someone who had dinner with friends once a week, someone who'd started dating again, carefully but genuinely, someone who'd joined a book club and a hiking group, expanding her circle beyond the hospital walls. Someone who'd learned that identity wasn't something to be hoarded and protected, but something to be lived and shared. The surgery took 4 hours. When it was complete and the patient stabilized, Sarah stepped out of the operating room and removed her mask. She felt the familiar satisfaction of a job well done, a life saved. But she also felt something else, gratitude, for the ordinary mundane details of her life, for the messy complexity of real relationships, for the person she was becoming, not despite what had happened with Catherine, but somehow because of it. In the end, Catherine had tried to steal Sarah's identity, but instead had inadvertently given Sarah something back, a clearer sense of who she actually was and who she wanted to be. That, Sarah thought, was something no one could ever take away. The end. The end.